What happened in this video baffles me, because it was just a warthog. Wait, did I really just say, just a warthog? This wasn't a wild animal gone rogue. This warthog had a name, a home, a bond. Austin Riley fed him, raised him, called him family. But on a quiet Texas evening in October 2022, Waylon, the 250-pound warthog he loved most, turned savage. 15 brutal wounds, no warning, just instinct and betrayal. Welcome to the Animal Quest channel. If you believe some animals should never be pets, like, subscribe, and stay with us, because what happens next will leave you speechless. In the heart of Bourne, Texas, where winding fences stretch across 130 acres of sun-baked hill country, a boy grew up among creatures most kids only saw in books. While others played tag or buried their faces in video games, Austin Riley was walking past pens of African kudu, brushing the coarse feathers of an ostrich, or scratching behind the ears of a white-tailed deer. His world was wild, and for Austin, it was perfect. But his story doesn't begin with animals. It begins with survival. Before he turned 1, doctors discovered a tumor inside his infant skull, the size of a golf ball. What followed were years of pain, scalpels, and hospital rooms, 3 brain surgeries before high school. One wrong move during a later procedure left him partially paralyzed on his left side, a condition he still lives with today. Most would have surrendered to that kind of fate, but not Austin. Out here on his father's land, known by locals as Riley Ranch, he learned to work with one arm, walk with a limp, and carry hay bales like nothing was wrong. He earned a nickname from family and neighbors alike, Farm Boy Strong. Gail Riley, his mother, once put it simply, he was never inside, didn't care about video games. He just wanted to be with the animals. And there were many, from springbok to zebras, fallow deer to llamas. Austin's father, Shane Riley, had stocked the ranch with animals from far-off places. Shane worked in oil and gas, but his passion was this land and the exotic creatures that roamed it. What began as a hobby had, over time, become a full-time breeding and selling business. Buyers came from across Texas, and Austin, from the time he could walk, was helping care for every one of them. There was always dirt under his fingernails and hay in his boots. He spoke to animals more than people, and in those creatures, he found something he didn't always find in humans. Peace, simplicity, loyalty. But none of them, not the deer, not the kudu, not even the bulldogs, would ever mean as much to him as the animal that would later try to end his life. That bond hadn't been formed yet, but it was coming. And when it arrived, it would come on a cold night with the first breath of a tiny warthog, struggling to live. It was a frigid December night in 2017, the kind that settles heavy across the wide plains of Bourne, Texas, when the tiny warthog came into the world. His mother didn't make it. She died during labor, her body exhausted, limp in the straw of the enclosure, before she even had the chance to nudge her newborn forward. Most ranchers would have written it off. One more failed birth among the unpredictability of exotic breeding, but Austin Riley wasn't most ranchers. The moment he saw the piglet gasping for its first breath, no larger than a hamster, slick with afterbirth and barely moving, something in him shifted. Without hesitation, he scooped it into his calloused hands. One hand cradled the tiny, shivering body. The other, a warm bottle of milk. He brought the piglet into his parents' home that night, not to keep it warm, but to keep it alive. In the laundry room, he built a makeshift nursery out of a plastic bin, lined it with baby blankets, filled it with fresh hay. He slept beside it, fed it every few hours like a newborn, monitored every twitch of its fragile legs. This wasn't just ranch work anymore. This was family. He named the piglet Waylon, after Waylon Jennings, the outlaw country legend he grew up listening to. It was a name for the unruly, the wild, the kind of creature that doesn't play by the rules, but still sings his own way through the world. And that's exactly what Waylon became. By spring, the weather turned warm, and Waylon graduated to a small wooden house just outside the main home. But he didn't go alone. Every morning, Austin would come down the porch steps, Warthog trailing behind him, following like a loyal pup. He'd roughhouse with the family's bulldog. He'd grunt excitedly at the sound of a milk jug popping open. He loved red apples, rough belly scratches, and tender massages on the hardened, bony snout forming on his face. After feedings, he'd climb into Austin's lap and fall asleep right there, his wart-covered head rising and falling with Austin's chest. To outsiders, it looked absurd. A farm boy with a warthog curled into his arms like a house cat. But to Austin, it made perfect sense. He'd never raised a child, but he said it often felt like he had. I just kind of became his parent. His dad, really, he recalled years later. And like any proud dad, he showed him off. On trips to Whataburger, Waylon would sit in the passenger seat of Austin's pickup, snorting contentedly as the car idled in the drive-thru. At gas stations, people would stare. Austin didn't care. To him, Waylon wasn't a pet. He was blood. He taught him simple commands. He built games out of scraps and tools. The warthog had personality, mischief, charm. But beneath the belly scratches and back seat rides, something darker was growing. Something no one, especially Austin, wanted to believe was still there. Because every animal, no matter how loved, still remembers what it is. And someday, Waylon would remind him. By the time Waylon turned 5 years old, he wasn't the cuddly piglet curled in a blanket anymore. He was a tank. Over 250 pounds of hardened muscle, thick with fat and laced with power. His hide was rough. His tusks, sharp, curved, and 7 inches long, could gut a full-grown man without hesitation. But despite his size and his appearance, Waylon was different. He didn't grunt and stomp like a feral beast. He knew his name. He followed basic commands, and he still came running the moment Austin called. It was common to see the warthog push open the gate to his enclosure, nose twitching in curiosity, just to nudge his way toward Austin's pant leg. Searching for apples, maybe, or just to steal something he wasn't supposed to have. One of his favorite games was finding the pair of pliers Austin always carried in his back pocket, grabbing it in his tusks, and sprinting off to the other side of the pen. Austin would pretend to be angry, chasing after him while Waylon zigzagged and snorted in delight, dodging behind hay bales and water troughs. It was a game they played for years, one that always ended the same way, Austin getting the pliers back and Waylon getting a belly rub in return. But eventually, Austin decided it was time to give Waylon more space. The pen outside the main house was too small for a warthog his size, so he built a larger reinforced enclosure several hundred yards down the slope, away from the rest of the animals, with fresh hay, thick mud, and a shaded corner where Waylon liked to nap. That became Waylon's home. Still, Austin visited every day, sometimes multiple times, and on especially calm afternoons, when the sun sat low over the hill country and the breeze rustled dry grass, Austin would step inside the pen, lie flat on his back in the dirt, and just listen. Sports radio crackling in the background, his boots kicked off, dust swirling in the air, and without fail, Waylon would come. He'd ease himself down beside Austin, settle his wart-covered head onto Austin's thigh, and close his eyes. They'd lie there for hours, not saying a word, just breathing together. 2 survivors, 1 man, 1 warthog, 1 unspoken understanding. Austin trusted him completely. He never showed one sign of aggression, Austin would later recall. Not once. In fact, he trusted Waylon more than most people, because Waylon never judged. He never asked questions about Austin's past surgeries or the way he limped. He didn't care about the scars. To Waylon, Austin was just his dad, the man who fed him, cared for him, brought him into this world, and that made what happened next all the more impossible to believe, because the bond they shared wasn't fake. It wasn't exaggerated. It was real. But even the deepest bond can't erase instinct, and somewhere inside Waylon, something ancient had never gone away. It was a quiet evening in October 2022, the kind of Texas sunset that paints the hill country in golden rust. The air was still. The last of the light dripped across the tall grass as Austin Riley walked alone across the ranch, heading toward the enclosure at the edge of the property, the one where Waylon now lived. It was routine, Nothing unusual. Just another evening checkup, a few scoops of feed, a few minutes of affection, maybe another game of plier keep away before heading back to the house. Austin unlatched the gate like he always did. He stepped inside the pen. His guard was down. He had no reason to feel fear. Waylon trotted toward him, same as always, snorting with recognition. For a moment, it was exactly as it had been every other day. Then everything changed, without sound, without warning, without reason. Waylon lunged, tusks first. The first hit came low, slamming into Austin's thigh, tearing through muscle with the force of a battering ram. Austin stumbled, shocked, trying to step back, but the second goring came faster, a savage upward thrust into his gut, flesh splitting, hot blood pouring out onto the dirt. Then another, and another. Waylon was no longer playing. The creature Austin had raised from a newborn, who had once fit in the palm of his hand, was now ripping him apart. 15 times. Tusks slashed across his stomach, legs, and neck, leaving deep, gaping wounds. One of the strikes shredded through his lower body so violently that his boots began to fill with blood. Another caught the side of his neck, inches from his carotid. Austin tried to run. He couldn't. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The pain was electric, searing and nauseating and endless. His vision blurred. His legs collapsed. He crawled, then dragged himself toward the far corner of the pen where the metal fence met the earth, hoping, praying for a breath of safety. And then stillness. Waylon backed off. Whether the warthog was satisfied, confused, or simply returned to instinctual calm, no one will ever know. But in those next few minutes, Austin lay bleeding out in the dirt, his hands trembling, his lungs wheezing, as the animal he'd once called family stood just a few feet away watching. This was how it would end. Not in a hospital, not on an operating table, but here, in the very pen he'd built, by the very creature he'd kept alive. After all he had survived, cancer, paralysis, surgeries, this was what would kill him, the tusks of his best friend. The sun dipped lower, and the light began to die. So did Austin, and no one, not his family, not his friends, knew what was happening just yards away, behind a quiet fence in the fading Texas dusk. The dirt beneath him felt cold. That's the first thing Austin Riley remembered. The warmth of his own blood had soaked through his jeans, pooling beneath his legs and across the broken earth inside Waylon's pen. The same pen he had built by hand. The same pen where he used to lie beside his warthog and listen to the wind. Now, he was dying in it. He drifted in and out, consciousness hanging by a thread, each breath shallower than the last. His fingers twitched near the fence line, grasping for something, anything to hold on to. He thought of Kennedy, his girlfriend. He thought of his 3 sisters. He thought of his parents, Shane and Gail, the ones who turned this wild land into a home and never stopped believing he could outlast the odds. And he thought of the ranch itself. In that moment, with the smell of hay and blood thick in the air, he realized it had never looked more beautiful. This was how it would end. Not in a hospital bed, not even fighting disease, but right here, just a few yards from his childhood home, alone, with Waylon still watching. But Austin Riley didn't quit. Not when he was a baby with a tumor in his brain, not when he faced the first surgery, or the second, or the third, not when he lost mobility in half his body, and not now. He stayed awake, somehow, long enough for someone to notice. Help came. Emergency responders raced through the ranch gates, down the dirt road toward the pen. They found him crumpled near the fence, barely breathing, soaked in blood, wounds still fresh and raw. One paramedic said later he had never seen anything like it. Not in an animal enclosure, not from a creature raised as a pet. Austin was rushed to a trauma center. Doctors worked frantically to stop the bleeding, stabilize his organs, and fight off the shock tearing through his body. 15 puncture wounds, torn flesh, damaged arteries, deep lacerations from tusks built to kill. And yet, he survived, inches from death. That's what the doctors told him when he woke. Not feet, not minutes, inches. And when Austin finally spoke, voice cracked, skin still pale and healing. He said something that stunned everyone in the room. "I just couldn't believe it," he whispered. "After everything I'd been through, the thing that nearly killed me was Waylon." Austin Riley survived, but what was left of him, physically, emotionally, spiritually, was far from whole. His body was a wreck. Dozens of stitches held his torso together. His legs were bruised and battered, his abdomen sliced with scars that would never fade. He couldn't walk without pain. He couldn't lie down without remembering the weight of Waylon's tusks driving into his flesh. He had cheated death, again. But this time, something inside him felt different. Because this wasn't just a survival story. This was a betrayal. The animal he had nurtured from birth, the creature he had raised like a son, the warthog that used to fall asleep on his chest, had turned on him without warning. Waylon had never shown aggression, not once in 5 years. No charge, no nip, not even a shove. He was playful, obedient, clever, loyal, or so Austin believed. Now everything about that belief had been shattered. And yet, Austin didn't say whether Waylon was put down. Not to the press, not to the community, not even to those closest to him. That silence said more than any answer ever could. Because for a man like Austin, who had poured his entire soul into caring for animals, the pain wasn't just physical. It wasn't just about survival. It was about trust, about being wrong. "I put blood, sweat, and tears into his life," he said, "and he decided to kill me." It wasn't said with anger, not even with hatred, just heartbreak. Some wounds don't bleed. Some wounds don't show up on CT scans or x-rays. This one ran through his memory, through his pride, through his very identity. Austin Riley, the man who trusted animals more than people, had been nearly killed by the one he trusted most. And no matter how many surgeries he endured, that scar would never heal. In the days after the attack, shock rippled through the hill country. Austin Riley wasn't just a survivor. He was a symbol, a man who had built his life around exotic animals, who believed that love, patience, and care could tame even the wildest of creatures. But the truth is, nature doesn't work that way. Across the country, animal behaviorists and veterinarians began weighing in. Warthogs, like their domestic cousins, are intelligent, highly intelligent. They recognize faces, they build routines. Some even form emotional attachments with humans. But none of that changes what they are at their core. Wild animals, born with instincts that no amount of training or tenderness can erase. One moment, Waylon was the beloved pet, rooting around for treats and flopping over for belly rubs. The next, he was a 250-pound missile of bone and tusk, moving with the kind of fury that no one, not even Austin, saw coming. And that's the hard truth many don't want to admit. Raising something from birth doesn't make it safe. Loving something deeply doesn't make it loyal. Feeding it, sheltering it, naming it, none of it can strip away instinct. Experts warn that private ownership of exotic animals, even on spacious ranches, even by well-meaning caretakers, is a ticking clock. Eventually, something triggers the primal. And when that moment comes, it's not a conversation. It's not a negotiation. It's an attack. Austin Riley's story is not just one of survival. It's a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks that love is enough. Because as he lay bleeding on the ground in that Texas pen, the warthog standing over him didn't see a caretaker. He didn't see a friend. He didn't see a father. He saw a threat, or a target, or maybe nothing at all. And that is what makes wild animals truly dangerous. No matter how close you think you are, you will never be one of them. Austin Riley should have died that day, but he didn't. He lived, broken, scarred, forever changed. And in surviving, he left behind more than just a warning. He left a question. What does it really mean to love something wild? Is trust enough? Is loyalty real? Or are we just pretending that instinct can be caged? If you believe wild animals don't belong in backyard enclosures, if you've ever wondered what it means to be truly betrayed, comment, subscribe, and remember this. Sometimes, the animal you love the most is the one that leaves the deepest scar. Thanks for watching.